Hi, I'm Julia Brookins. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator at the American Historical Association, and I have been the staff director of the AHA's tuning project since 2012.
And I'm Dan McInerney. I'm a professor of history at Utah State University. I've been involved in tuning in the state of Utah since 2009, and I came on to serve as senior advisor to the AHA tuning project in January of 2012.
We're here to talk today about the impact and lessons of the tuning project for the AHA, for students, for history faculty, and for the history discipline generally.
When somebody receives a degree in a disciplinary program, what should they know, what should they understand, and what should they be able to do? It seems like a pretty straightforward question.
Yes.
But it's an awfully difficult one for many disciplines to answer, especially disciplines that don't have a culture of addressing that kind of question. History is one of those disciplines. But it seemed to be, and still is, an important question to answer, in great part because of questions of accountability in higher education that we've all faced, especially since 2008-9. And I found that the tuning system is one that helps not only individual faculty members and departments, but institutions and statewide systems and private schools as well, to come up with fairly reasonable responses to this question of what's going on at this institution? What's the purpose of higher education? What are you trying to achieve in the programs that you have your students run through? The other advantage, as we've seen in the AHA, is that tuning takes us in all kinds of directions in a variety of academic reforms, which I know have strengthened our discipline, have made us a model for other disciplines and disciplinary societies, and provides us with quite a sound set of answers to questions about accountability, assessment, accreditation. Those questions are not going away. It's useful to have good answers to those questions. And it's also useful for us to be in charge of the answers, to not have others who are non-historians answer the questions for us. You know, one of our colleagues, the faculty leader of the project, Ann Hyde at the University of Oklahoma, I think she phrased this best. And it's one I often use to introduce the subject to an audience. Ann says, Ann asks the audience to imagine a first faculty meeting of the year. And at that meeting, no one talks about course assignments, or budgets, or office space, or parking. We don't talk about those things. There's one question for that opening meeting. What are the ideals that brought us into this line of work? And how do we best share them with students?
So is that not what happens in faculty meetings generally?
It's 3/4 is about parking spaces and course assignments. I think it's a very understandable way of asking kind of the central question that tuning poses to us. What is it that you share as an ideal, as an objective in your field? And as Ann Hyde says, how do we best share that with our students? And it makes you think to the curriculum as a whole, individual courses, the sequence of the courses, and these small component parts of our day-to-day work. What are the assignments you use in a class to move students towards the goals you've outlined? How effective are they? How ineffective might they be? And what are you learning from your colleagues about the way they organize their coursework too? All of this, I think, builds a greater spirit of community in a department. It breaks down a lot of barriers. It helps us move from the idea of my course to our curriculum.
I know that we had sort of a scaling up. So we had a steering committee of 6, then we had a larger group of 60 history faculty members from 59 different institutions.
Yep.
And then we had another group of almost 100 historians come into the project in 2015. And we had several attempts to articulate what it was that history students should know, understand, and be able to do at the successful completion of a history program. If you could just say a little bit about that statement, and what you find compelling about it, what purpose you think it serves for students and for others.
I think one of the most important parts about that statement is that it has gone through so many revisions, and that it started with a small group. That small group experienced some of the difficulty of stating these goals, and it's continued to work its way out. And the comments, the criticism, the suggestions that have come from other colleagues, I think, have only gone to strengthen that statement and give us, again, not a standard, it's not a word we use in this project, but give us a set of reference points. There's no expectation that every history department is going to address those key reference points in a history education in the same way. They can't, because of different resources, different students, different missions on different campuses. But at least there's a set of guidelines for us to focus on and to give some kind of order and meaning and context to the larger purposes we're trying to serve. I guess another way to say this is one I use when I go to talk to audiences. I show them a picture of a diploma, and I ask them, what does that diploma mean? And people often come back with answers that focus on, well, it's 120 credits, or well, it means that a student has a kind of minimum GPA, or they've checked off a list of required courses. Everything that we usually associate with a diploma is in terms of numbers, but it doesn't say anything about the learning, which is at the core of the work. The whole project is based on this fundamental trust in the discipline experts. Who else do you ask about the meaning and purpose of a history degree than historians? Is it just an administrator you ask for that who has no familiarity with the field? And I think this cuts across disciplines, and this is a hackneyed phrase, but I think it's empowering for faculty members to think, finally, someone recognizes the work, the expertise that I've demonstrated here, that my colleagues have demonstrated, and that our word is being trusted. We know what we're talking about here.
And one of the things that came up early was that some colleagues, not in the AHA project, but elsewhere, might say, well, okay, why don't we just say critical thinking and then we can all go home? What do you think that the AHA tuning project has added to that description of what the value of history education is?
I think the most important point is that we've reminded ourselves every discipline on every campus can come up with that same answer. That's all we do on campuses, is engage ourselves and our students in critical thinking. But if you want to continue the existence of your department, you'd better come up with a distinctive response to that question. What does a philosopher or a philosophy department contribute to the work of critical thinking? What do historians contribute? What do physicists contribute? That's important not only as a way to define and defend ourselves. I think it also makes for richer conversations in the rest of the life of that campus, especially the conversation that's distinctive to the US, Gen Ed conversations, where we're asking students to establish a considerable body of breadth in their learning that cuts across multiple disciplines. I've found in the Gen Ed work that I've done and that colleagues have told me about, the tuning process just made them smarter contributors to those conversations because they understood the broader context of what Gen Ed was trying to achieve, and they had to reflect on this question, why should we have a history course in Gen Ed? What is that serving? How does it differ from a survey course that a chemist might provide? It provides us with good answers to those questions. we know how important those introductory gateway courses are to our departments. It's something we don't want to lose. And it's not just for issues of faculty numbers and funding. It's important because of what we share as our ideals about the nature of historical study, how important it is to the basic understanding of higher education and to the contributions that citizens make to their society with that education.
Starting at the AHA, when I did, I have noticed that the AHA Tuning Project helped the organization reach faculty who were at diverse institutions who maybe didn't feel as invested in the overall work that the AHA had been doing before.
Yeah.
And it's really raised the profile of teaching and learning, of curriculum, and of this kind of collaborative endeavor at the AHA. What do you see, I guess, as the tuning project's contribution to the AHA? I know that you won the Troyer Steele Anderson Prize last year for your contributions to the AHA. So what do you see as not just your contributions, but the project's contributions to the organization?
I see it every time I come to a conference now. And I know these are not like the conferences 10 years ago. As you said, you see a greater range of people from a greater range of institutions. And to me, I think I've been struck by this again and again. The most important single contribution is the number of colleagues from two-year institutions who not only come to this conference, who not only give presentations, who not only participate in the teaching and learning sessions, but as our executive director, Jim Grossman, has said to us, who are starting to take leadership roles in the AHA. Those two-year institutions are at the very heart of American higher education. And they're a signal to those of us in four-year institutions where higher education is going, especially in terms of this more diverse student body, diverse in terms of age, diverse in terms of the trajectory they have through higher education, diverse in the kind of formats that they expect will be able to deliver for them. Having those two-year faculty first taught me the high standards they set for their students, correcting these misapprehensions on the part of some that the work at two-year institutions wasn't all that serious. I think that in our first meetings, that was just drilled right out of us. I, the other colleagues on the work, I think we were so impressed by the expectations that those colleagues set and how much they were helping us by setting such high goals for their students. And helping us understand another important point. For those students who do want to move on from an associate's degree to a bachelor's, how can people at four-year institutions help those students as much as possible in this process of transfer and the articulation of courses? The responsibility we at four-year institutions bear for this, if we proclaim our interest in student learning and success. I think it was a strong reminder to us of the commitment we have to students from an increasingly diverse set of backgrounds. Students who are more and more first generation, students who are caught in some real problems of equity on campuses. If we want to address higher education for the mass of students in the United States, we've got to keep our focus on those issues too, not simply on the strong and committed dedication we have to our discipline. We've got to make that commitment coincide with our commitment to other issues that involve fairness, equity, openness, and assistance to a broader range of students, and to understand the education that they might bring with them, especially from two-year schools where so many of our students start. That to me has been the single most important contribution from the very start, from the very first meetings of this project. And it's, I'll tell you, frankly, I found it very inspiring too. And I think at every conference we come to in the AHA, we just see another aspect of tuning that's being played out as our colleagues think of how this project applies to so many parts of day-to-day campus life. Again, one of the most important is just the attention that our organization has paid to non-majors, to students in introductory gateway courses, to history's contribution to general education, to questions of enrollment, especially where it's been in decline on different campuses. What can we do, not simply in an administrative way, what can we do in the core of our coursework and curriculum work with students to engage more in the study of history and to make it meaningful to their lives in the early 21st century? It's tough to answer the question, what exactly has been the effect of tuning? Because tuning kind of morphs into these other projects. And how do you pull out the one factor that is at the origin of all of this change?
I've been to a number of sessions where there's been at least one tuner on the panel, and I thought, if it hadn't been for this project, would these people have been engaged with the American Historical Association? Would they be proposing sessions? Would they be putting these issues before the disciplinary community? And I have to say, I'm always very proud when I go and I see tuners, but I'm also it makes me a little bit frightened of what if we hadn't done it?
Right.
What would the 2018 meeting look like? So
right.
I'm pleased at how it's turned out.
and so well, it's a world of unanticipated consequences. We know a lot about that as historians.